They say funerals bring families together, but for me, Grandpa's funeral tore everything apart. I remember standing there under the gray sky, surrounded by expensive cars, fake tears, and the smell of freshly cut roses. My cousins were whispering about inheritance, who would get the mansion, who would get the business. And me? I stood quietly in the back row, holding my mother's old handbag, the one stitched a dozen times but still falling apart. When the lawyer arrived, everyone gathered like vultures. Grandpa had been a rich man. Factories, land, and properties in 3 cities. His will was supposed to change lives. It did. Just not how anyone expected. The lawyer opened a brown envelope and started reading. My heart pounded when he said my name, to my granddaughter Sarah. Everyone turned to look at me. I felt my palms sweat. Then the lawyer read the words that burned into my memory. I leave Sarah 1 plane ticket to any destination of her choice. The room went silent. Then came the laughter. My uncles smirked. My cousins whispered. My aunt rolled her eyes. Millions for them. A plane ticket for me. I tried to hold back tears, pretending it didn't hurt, but inside I was breaking. That day I walked out of that mansion with nothing but that ticket in my hand, and a question that wouldn't leave my mind. Why did Grandpa give me this? Growing up, Grandpa was my hero. He wasn't just rich, he was wise, patient, and kind. When my parents died in a car accident, he was the one who held me through the nights I couldn't stop crying. He used to tell me, "Sarah, money fades, but purpose doesn't." Back then, I didn't understand what he meant. But as the years passed, I noticed how different he treated everyone else. My uncles only visited when they needed loans. My cousins bragged about designer clothes Grandpa bought them. Yet with me, he gave time. Stories, lessons, and long walks through his old workshop where he built wooden toys with his own hands. He used to say, "You'll understand my will someday." Those words came back to me after the funeral, echoing in my head. That night, I sat on my small apartment floor holding the plane ticket. There was a small note folded inside. I hadn't noticed it before. It read, "Go where your heart finds peace. The truth is waiting there." Peace? Truth? I didn't even know where to start. But deep down, something told me Grandpa wasn't cruel. This was a message, maybe even a test. So I packed a small bag, sold my old phone to afford a few essentials, and booked a flight. Destination: Willow Creek, the small town where Grandpa grew up. Willow Creek wasn't on any fancy map. It was a sleepy town with dusty roads, wooden houses, and a population small enough that everyone knew everyone. When I stepped off the bus, people stared, probably because I looked like an outsider with city shoes and teary eyes. I went to the old property Grandpa once owned, a broken abandoned workshop near the river. The paint had peeled off, and wildflowers had grown through the cracks in the wood. Inside, everything was covered in dust, but on the workbench lay a small sealed wooden box, and on top of it, a note, written in Grandpa's familiar handwriting. "If you're reading this, Sarah, it means you chose to search for truth instead of comfort." My hands trembled as I opened the box. Inside was a small key and an address. The address led me to an old caretaker named Mr. Harris. When he saw me, his eyes widened. "You're George's granddaughter?" he asked. He told me one day a young woman with kind eyes would come, and when she does, tell her everything. I felt my heart race. Everything about what? He sighed and handed me an old photograph. Grandpa, standing with a group of workers in front of a factory. That factory, Harris said softly, wasn't always his. He took it back from those who betrayed him. Betrayed him? I realized. Maybe this trip wasn't about me inheriting money. Maybe it was about understanding the betrayal that shaped Grandpa's life. And maybe my inheritance was hidden somewhere inside that truth. Mr. Harris invited me inside and began to tell the story. Years ago, my grandfather built his business with his 3 brothers, my uncle's fathers. But when success came, greed followed. They pushed him out, forged signatures, and left him bankrupt. While he struggled, they expanded using his ideas and his land. He never took them to court. He just disappeared to Willow Creek, rebuilt everything from scratch, quietly, honestly, and alone. Your grandfather forgave them, Mr. Harris said, but he never forgot. As I listened, anger burned in my chest. The same men who betrayed Grandpa were the ones who inherited millions after his death. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked back to the workshop and looked through his old notebooks. Inside one, I found another letter. This one was addressed to me. Sarah, I know the pain of betrayal, but I also know the peace of justice. I've left you not what they wanted, but what they need. I didn't understand it at first, but as I flipped the page, a legal document fell out, a hidden property deed under my name. It was signed years before Grandpa died, and attached to it, a note that read, "When the truth comes out, they will realize who really inherited everything." My heart stopped. He hadn't left me a plane ticket. He had left me a path. For a week, I stayed in Willow Creek, meeting people who once worked for Grandpa. They told me stories about his kindness, how he helped families when the factory closed, how he never spoke badly about his brothers. But they all said one thing in common. He always believed the right person would continue his legacy. That right person was me. The deed I found wasn't for a small house or land. It was for a trust that owned 51% of the company shares Grandpa's brothers thought they controlled. He had secretly rebuilt ownership under a different name, Wings Foundation, and I was the sole successor. At first, I wanted to march straight into the city and expose them. But then, I remembered Grandpa's words, "Justice without anger lasts longer." So instead, I prepared carefully. I met with the same lawyer who read the will. When he saw the documents, his eyes widened. "Sarah, do you realize what this means? You're the majority owner." I nodded. "I don't want to ruin them, I just want them to see the truth." He smiled. "Then let's do this your way." A month later, a family meeting was called, officially to discuss the company's future. My uncles sat at the head of the table, confident, loud, and arrogant as ever. I entered quietly, holding a single brown envelope, just like Grandpa's lawyer once did. "Why is she here?" one of them muttered. I looked around the room. Same mansion, same fake smiles, same greed. Then I opened the envelope and placed the documents on the table. "This," I said calmly, "is the new ownership deed, signed by Grandpa himself." They leaned forward, confused. One of them laughed. "You think he'd trust you with anything?" I took a deep breath and said the 6 words that changed everything. "I own what you stole from him." Silence. Their faces went pale. The lawyer confirmed it, legally, officially, and undeniably. The room erupted. They shouted, argued, blamed each other. I just stood there, calm, the same way Grandpa must have stood years ago when they betrayed him. Finally, I said softly, "He didn't want revenge. He wanted redemption. Maybe now you'll understand." And I walked out, leaving them speechless, just like they once left him. In the weeks that followed, I took over the company, but not for power. I reopened the old factory at Willow Creek, rehired the workers, and started a new foundation in Grandpa's name. People called me brave, but I knew I was just finishing what he started. Sometimes late at night, I'd sit by the river near his old workshop, the plane ticket still tucked in my journal. I finally understood why he gave it to me. It wasn't a plane ticket to escape. It was a ticket to discover truth. He didn't want me to chase money. He wanted me to find meaning. And I did. Grandpa once said, "Revenge fades, but justice teaches." Now, when people ask how I handled betrayal, I tell them, sometimes the best revenge is proving you never needed theirs. Because Grandpa didn't just leave me a fortune. He left me a story worth living for. Never measure love by inheritance or loyalty by money. The truth has its own way of finding those who deserve it, even if it takes one plane ticket to get there.